Japan is truly timeless, a place where ancient traditions are fused with modern life as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Traditional culture. On the surface, Japan appears exceedingly modern, but traveling around it offers numerous opportunities to connect with the country's traditional culture. Spend the night in a ryokan, sleeping on futons and tatami mats, and padding through well-worn wooden halls to the bathhouse. Meditate with monks or learn how to whisk bitter matcha into a froth. From the splendor of a Kyoto geisha dance to the spare beauty of a Zen rock garden, Japan has the power to enthrall even the most jaded traveler. Food. Wherever you are in Japan, it seems you're never far from a great meal. Restaurants often specialize in just one dish, perhaps having spent generations perfecting it, and pay close attention to every stage, from sourcing the freshest, local ingredients to assembling the dish attractively. And as you'll quickly discover, Japanese cuisine has great regional variations. The hearty hot pots of the mountains are, for example, dramatically different from the delicate sushi for which the coast is famous. It's also intensely seasonal, meaning you can visit at a different time of year and experience totally new tastes. Outdoors. Japan is a long and slender, highly volcanic archipelago. It's over 2/3 mountains, with bubbling hot springs at every turn. In the warmer months there is excellent hiking, through cedar groves and fields of wildflowers, up to soaring peaks and ancient shrines. In the winter, all this is covered with snow and the skiing is world-class. Meanwhile, in the southern reaches, there are tropical beaches for sunning, snorkeling, and diving. Ease of travel. Japan is incredibly easy to get around. You can do a whole trip using nothing but its immaculate, efficient public transport. The Shinkansen network now runs all the way from the southern tip of Kyushu up to Hokkaido, and reasonably priced rail passes make it affordable. Major cities have subway networks that are signposted in English, and these days we're seeing and hearing more English all over. But if getting off the beaten track and outside your comfort zone is what you're after, you can have that experience too. When will Japan lift its travel ban and reopen for international individual travelers? Will borders open as normal in fall 2022? These are questions among those planning trips to Tokyo, Kyoto, Osaka, etc. We monitor foreign visitor advisories, news, and more for answers. The good news is that we now have an answer to those threshold questions we've been asking for nearly 2 years. Japan will reopen to individual tourists in October 2022. There are still some unknowns, but Japan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs has offered new guidance that we're covering in Japan reopening to individual tourists, FAQ, rules and guidelines. That'll help you prepare for arrival and potentially save time at the airport. We will be reporting from Japan extensively in the coming weeks about our experiences, what it's like as a foreign visitor in 2022, what has changed, crowd conditions, expenses of visiting Japan in 2022 to 2023 with the weaker yen, and much more. We typically spend a couple of months in Japan each year and are ecstatic to be returning after nearly 3 years away. We are eager to revisit our favorite places, see friends in Japan for the first time in over 2 years, and continue creating this site's wealth of free planning resources. We're excited about this great news, but also go in knowing that things will be different in ways both good and bad. For these 2+ years, we've been closely monitoring the situation in Japan, watching several hours of NHK each day and reading multiple Japanese news sources. All of this in the hope for some clarity as to when the country will fully reopen and Japan will begin allowing international tourists to enter once again. What follows is based on that research and fixation with the on-the-ground situation in Japan. We're preserving this for posterity, but everything that follows is now obsolete information. Refer to the links above for the latest on Japan's October 11, 2022 reopening to individual tourists. Japan is now allowing foreign nationals to enter Japan for purposes other than tourism so long as they have a sponsor in the country. This includes business travelers on short stays, students in study abroad programs, participants in technical internships, both guided and unguided tour groups, spouses or children of a Japanese national, permanent resident, others with special exceptional circumstances, and those who would provide a public benefit to Japan. This excludes individual tourists. It is still not possible to visit Japan for self-guided tourism right now, and won't be possible until early October 2022. That's the vast majority of foreign visitors, especially those reading an English language post on a website with travel in the name. With that in mind, let's cover how we got here, why Japan maintains the strictest among the group of 7 developed nations, and what could cause that to change. Again and again, Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has said that Japan will continue to consider how the measures should be by taking into account the infection situations at home and abroad, border control measures taken by other nations, and progress in the rollout of vaccine boosters. Kishida has also acknowledged that Japan's border control measures are the strictest among group of 7 nations, and expressed a need to bring Japan in line with its counterparts. This is the first step in our gradual easing of the restrictions, Kishida has said. As for why Japan's border is still closed over a year after most democracies reopened, that can largely be explained by the country's apprehensiveness of outsiders. For better or worse, Japan is an insular and culturally conservative country, a characteristic that is often valued by visitors. Not so much in the last couple of years, as this has been reflected in policy making. Japan has vilified and scapegoated foreigners and had an overly aggressive approach to its borders. Due to this and other policies, Japan has lagged behind economically, seeing slower recovery than the United States and other counterparts that have more aggressively reopened. Economic benefits of international tourists is one big reason why Japan is expected to reopen its border. Boosting tourism was core to the late former Prime Minister Abe's economic revitalization, and both subsequent prime ministers have indicated their intentions to maintain continuity with those plans. However, the number of foreign visitors to Japan dropped to 245,900 last year, the lowest since 1964, as the country enforced tighter border controls. Compared with the pre-pandemic level in 2019, it dropped 99.2%. That's the sharpest fall on record according to the Japan Tourism Agency. Economists fear a double-dip recession in Japan due to the prolonged closures and restrictions. Decreased tourism plus falling exports, an increased consumption tax, reduced consumer spending, weak yen, and growing national debt. Japan's economy has serious issues and inbound tourism was previously a bright spot. In other words, reopening to international visitors will be important to the health of Japan's consumption-driven economy at some point in the not-too-distant future. This becomes increasingly true as the yen weakens due to the Bank of Japan continuing to pursue its loose monetary policy while the United States Federal Reserve, European, and other central banks raise interest rates. Quite simply, Japan is inflicting pain on itself by remaining closed. There are also signs that stringent travel measures, including the border closure, are having a greater impact on Japan's economy than previously believed. This is despite Japan's Go to Travel campaign that subsidized domestic travel, which was offered at various times during the last 2 years. According to data from the Japan Tourism Agency, stays at hotels and other accommodation facilities hit another record low in Japan last year, breaking the previous record set in 2020. The total of guests at hotels and inns was 315.75 million, down 4.8% from 2020 and 47% from 2019. The ruling coalition of the Liberal Democratic Party recognizes these problems and realizes it needs to rebuild Japan's economy. Prime Minister Fumio Kishida stated that his top priority was formulating new economic measures and implementing these goals. The government will also take measures to stimulate and jumpstart the economy. Despite the aforementioned numbers, Japan is maintaining its goal of attracting 60 million foreign visitors by 2030. Additionally, the Japan National Tourism Organization has set 2024 as its goal for recovering to 2019 international travel levels. Both of these statements are reassuring given the current border closures and indicate that Japan will unwind its travel ban in months, not years. We have more good news. Multiple media outlets, including NHK, Kyodo, Nikkei, and Fuji TV are all reporting that Japan's government is planning to further relax restrictions and border measures with an eye to implementing the revisions by the start of October 2022. First, there is consensus that the daily arrival cap, which is currently set at 50,000, will be eliminated entirely. This is a necessary prerequisite for further reopening and the resumption of more inbound international flights, but this alone was not an obstacle dissuading most international visitors. While the daily number of arrivals was higher pre-closure, we assume that 50,000 is the level at which this cap becomes immaterial with China still sidelined. Regardless, it's good to have this removed as it eliminates an element of uncertainty and could have been an issue during peak travel times for the Japanese. Another possibility is that Japan will allow individual foreign tourists to enter the country and exempt them from visas if they have been vaccinated 3 times or submit a pre-arrival test result. This is where there is disagreement among the major outlets. Kyodo, Nikkei, and NHK are reporting that this is to be determined, with government officials still deciding whether to proceed with this plan or start with lifting the daily arrival cap. By contrast, Fuji TV is treating this as a done deal, using less ambiguous language. Prime Minister Fumio Kishida reportedly plans to make a decision as early as the end of this week, according to the news outlet's sources. These leaks came after Deputy Chief Cabinet Secretary Seiji Kihara spoke on Fuji TV over the weekend and stated that Japan will consider easing all 3 restrictions: the daily arrival cap, ban on individual tourists, and visa requirements. We will review all 3 restrictions together. We have to carry it out in the not-so-distant future, he said. Japan has seasonal attractions in fall and winter. We know there are a lot of people overseas who want to come to Japan, Kihara added. Amid the weakening yen, inbound travelers will have greatest economic effect. There are many foreign visitors who want to come visit Japan. Kihara added that eliminating the arrival cap alone was not enough. Kihara isn't the only one who has been vocal about fully reopening to tourists recently. During the Bloomberg New Voices panel, Tokyo Governor Yuriko Koike said she would open the country's doors tomorrow if it were her decision. Tourism is a big industry in Tokyo, as well as in all Japan, so this is the time to greet more foreign tourists by using this advantage of the depreciation of the yen, she said. Koike said that Japan's borders would fully reopen soon. The national border is under the management of central government, Koike said. As governor of Tokyo, that would be tomorrow. The yen has fallen to a 24-year low of 144 yen to the dollar, likely contributing to the sense of urgency in the aforementioned interviews. Japan eased its border restrictions last week, raising the daily arrival cap from 20,000 to 50,000 and dropping the requirement for pre-arrival PCR testing for vaccinated travelers. Japan also began allowing unguided tours, meaning ones not accompanied by tour conductors. This is specifically for unguided tour groups or non-escorted visitors on package tours and not individual tourists. In unguided tours in Japan, reopening phase rules, we cover what this entails and the recently released guidelines and FAQ for these tours. We were wrong. The unguided tours offered 2 steps forward but 1 step backwards. We mention this in part to own past mistakes, but also as a cautionary tale. While it certainly sounds like the end is near for the Japan travel ban, it's premature to have a high degree of confidence. Kishida's government has been trying to take advantage of the weak yen and accelerate growth by attracting more foreign visitors. It thus stands to reason that opening to individual tourists necessarily needs to occur, that raising the entry cap will do nothing in furtherance of their stated goal. However, as we have seen time and time again, the patently obvious conclusion often is not the outcome reached by Japan. Moreover, how this played out with Japan's last announcement is also instructive. On August 23rd, specifics of the September relaxation measures were leaked to the same media outlets. At that time, it was unclear whether unguided tourists would be allowed to enter. On August 31st, Kishida made an official announcement encompassing all of the rumored changes, including unguided tourists. While presenting the above as a cautionary tale against optimism or over-reliance on logic when assessing Japan's decisions, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm sorry, I can't help myself. Like a moth to a flame. First, there's already the realization that unguided tours, like guided tours before them, will not move the needle on inbound tourism in any meaningful way. It's another symbolic measure, and coming at a time when an increasing number of international visitors have already moved on to other destinations and pent-up demand has begun fizzling out. The number of people anxiously awaiting Japan's reopening is shrinking, not growing. Second, there's awareness within the Kishida administration that the window of opportunity to reopen the border is closing. This is something we've pointed out in our best and worst case scenarios in prior updates, but there's only a limited amount of time between waves. Over 2 years into this, the seasonality of COVID activity. As we've stressed repeatedly, Japan's populace has been among the most cautious in the world with regard to COVID-19. Human behavior and sentiment don't change overnight, even if it's economically advantageous and objectively safer to do so. Statements by politicians and medical advisors, gradual border relaxation measures, and other changes could be interpreted as Japan laying the groundwork for a resumption of normalcy and the country's eventual reopening. It now appears that the time is here or coming very soon. With all of this said, I'll present my revised best, worst, and base case scenarios for Japan's reopening to individual tourists. If you like this video, please subscribe our channel. Thanks for watching.